Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. What we have right here is the brand new Samsung Galaxy Book Pro 360, which, if you might have seen in the launch, promised a lot of really impressive things, from an extremely light and thin design to the fact that it comes with an S Pen and all types of software integrations to give you a better experience with your laptop, kind of essentially bring you the Apple experience to Windows and Android. They're giving a lot of integrations between your phone and your laptop, including nearby share and all types of things like that. We'll get to that later on in the video, but now that we actually have it in the studio, we can get into some testing. I can show you a physical tour and tell you everything that you need to know about the outside, the design of this laptop, and of course put it to the test from a Geekbench test to a webcam test, a speaker test, battery test, and anything else you might want to know before considering buying the Galaxy Book Pro 360. So this one right here, let's start off with a physical tour. This one is the 13.3-inch model. It's a nice dark blue. I overall really like the aesthetic, and it is striking how thin and light this laptop is, coming in at just 2.3 pounds, or actually less than 2.3 pounds. And like I said, 13.3-inch model. There's also a 15.6-inch model if you want something a little bit larger. Of course, that's going to come with some differences in the ports and the battery and stuff like that, but generally speaking, it's going to be a really similar device. Now, this one, as you can see, folds back 360 degrees, so on the front, there's a nice little notch there where you can put your finger, and if we just do a quick hinge test, you can put your finger in and just do a one-handed open. It's really easy. There's a little bit of a magnetic closure there to keep it shut, so once you get past that, opening it is very, very easy. Now, something to note, even though I like the stiffness of these hinges, the overall design of these 360 hinges, as we saw in like the HP Spectre and many other laptops, does have its drawbacks. So one of them is that you don't have really sufficient damping and you end up with a little bit of screen wobble. So as I'm talking right now, moving my hands around, the screen in front of me is wobbling back and forth. A subtle drawback, but if you're at a desk where you end up talking with your hands or somebody's moving around, you're going to notice that. Now, if you fold it back all the way, you'll notice that it looks a little bit strange as a tablet because it's not centered. So if you look at the display, you have a really, really thin bezel on what would be in a laptop mode at the top, and on the bottom where the hinges are, a much larger bezel. So I think in tablet mode, that looks a little bit strange. It's nice that we have a thin bezel on the top and the right side when you're in laptop mode. So, you know, just something to be aware of. If you plan on using this as a tablet, it might look a little bit strange. Now, other than that, you'll notice that on the top, something that comes with the thin bezel, or really doesn't come with a thin bezel, is you're not going to get any kind of Face ID on here. So you don't have the infrared blasters up there, meaning that you don't have Windows Hello for Face ID. Instead, we do have a fingerprint button on the keyboard. Your power button is also a fingerprint sensor, and I think that works really well. So I had no problems with that whatsoever when I'm using this. But it is a little nicer on some laptops when you have that Face ID. And speaking of the power button, let's talk a little bit more about the keyboard. I found that the keyboard overall has a pretty nice feel to the keys, a pretty nice travel, a nice little click to that, but not too loud. And for a really thin 13-inch laptop, I was impressed with how much travel they actually do have. Something I noticed, however, is that there is a little bit of flex in the middle of the keyboard. If you're a harder typer, you might notice that. It might affect your typing a little bit. But again, that's something that we're typically seeing on laptops around this size. It's not uncommon. And other than that, the laptop keyboard does a pretty decent job. The backlighting on here, they actually have 3 or really 4 different levels. So you can go to 30, 60, or 100, or you can actually go and turn that off. It's not especially bright in any of those, so I usually just leave it up at 100. And in a dark environment, it's great because you can see the keys, but in any type of medium or semi-dim environment, it's not especially a bright backlighting. Now, the keyboard also has some really nice function buttons on the top row. Of course, the usual ones with brightness and volume, but the ones that are particularly interesting, one of them is to turn off the camera and the microphone, and the second one is to swap between different performance modes. So you can go into a silent mode where the fan is totally off, an optimized mode, you can go into a really performance mode where it's going to be really allowing you to push your CPU as much as possible. And so it's nice to have that little quick button on the top. Okay, now closing this laptop and looking a little bit more around the edges, you'll see on the right side, we have 3 ports. We've got our headphone jack, we have our USB Type-C, and we have a micro SD card slot. So that's pretty much as you really could cram into this because the laptop is so incredibly thin. And then on the other side, we have 2 USB Type-C ports. You'll notice that the one on the right has a little Thunderbolt logo. It's kind of hard to see there, but that's your Thunderbolt port right there. And we have a little indicator light next to that for when you're charging. Of course, you could charge with really any one of these ports with the charger that comes in the box. They come with a Samsung 60-watt or super fast charger, so you can charge like other devices as well if you wanted to. Some drawbacks with this design, first of all, this one, as I said, is the blue version, and it is a total fingerprint magnet. Not so much fingerprints as it is like smudges. Like my hands, I just washed my hands. They're not greasy. They feel very normal. And you have all these kind of little smudges all over the whole body of this laptop. So that's a drawback right there. I found that if you wipe them off, like it's not a problem. Maybe you're going to be wearing latex gloves when you use your laptop, but you know, at least the blue model, you want to keep that in mind. Secondly, if we flip it over to the bottom, you'll see that we have 4 little openings for our speakers. So we'll do a speaker test in a second, but we also have 4 little pads on each little corner. We have a pad, but I noticed that these pads seem to be kind of popping out. I know that they kind of just snap in place, but whatever glue is on the bottom of them is either very weak or otherwise not supposed to hold them in. But I found that these, like 2 of them already have popped off and I had to push them in. And this is only like, you know, I barely had this thing. So after using this for like a year, I would be very surprised if you still had those little pads on the bottom. Oh, and also I mentioned this laptop comes with an S Pen. It's a little bit different than we saw in the past. So last year's Samsung laptops came with an S Pen in the side. So it's a little S Pen similar to like the Galaxy Note S Pen, much smaller, but it was in the laptop, which I thought was really a great place to store it. This one, however, is more like the tablet S Pen, which is easier to hold, easier to use, but I don't really have anywhere to store it. If you just stick it on the back of your laptop, it does stay there magnetically in more than a few locations. You can kind of stick it almost anywhere you want. But with that being said, if I throw this in my backpack, it's really likely that that is going to fall off and I'm going to lose my S Pen. So I don't know in 5 or 6 months of using this laptop how much I would actually use the S Pen or how frequently I would have it with me. But, you know, testing it out, I found that it works reasonably well. I found that at least when you first start using it, I don't know if it's some kind of residue on the tip or what's going on, but it does leave some markings on the screen when you're writing. So that's a small drawback, but of course you can just wipe it off with a piece of fabric or any screen cleaner and it totally goes away. And that kind of brings me into the display. So of course the display works with the S Pen. It's also just a touch screen so you can use your finger, but they really advertise this heavily as a display with Samsung's Super AMOLED. So Super AMOLED is something that we're seeing on their tablets, their phones, and I mean, to be honest, like a Samsung phone has one of the best screens out there. Really a fantastic looking screen with great color, great refresh rate, great resolution. Like their phones do a great job there. Now, the laptop, however, it has a Super AMOLED screen, but the only thing that really translated from the phones is going to be the color. It looks really good. It's got great color, but it is compromised a little bit with the brightness and the resolution. So unfortunately, the resolution of this model right here is actually only 1080p. I'm not sure why they didn't bump that up to anything higher. When I'm using the S Pen, I noticed that if you're trying to write anything small in tablet mode, you can definitely see the pixels, and I feel limited actually by the resolution of the screen there. Although I really don't want to underplay the color accuracy. I found that the Super AMOLED really gives you darker blacks, better contrast, and the colors overall look fantastic on here. So I was very impressed with that. So with that being said, that's pretty much everything to know physically about this laptop. It doesn't have wireless power share. It doesn't have any kind of hidden S Pens on board, but we can actually get into a webcam test now. As I said, we have the webcam on the top, which is great, but it doesn't have any kind of Face ID. It's also limited to 720p. Another drawback, I mean, it's 2021. I'm not sure why people are using 720p on a webcam, but this webcam has some benefits. We'll get to that in a second, some really cool software features, but let's just get into a test first. All right, guys, so this is the webcam for the Galaxy Book Pro 360. This is what it sounds like and looks like. Honestly, this is probably as good as it's ever going to look. I have a ton of studio lights in front of me, and this is a pretty well-insulated room for echo, but this actually should have some noise-canceling mics, so if you're in a noisier environment, it should be blocking out a lot of stuff around you. Something else to note is that on the keyboard, we actually have a button to disable the microphone and the camera for privacy reasons. That's honestly a pretty nice feature to have. You'll notice right there, as I talk, if I ever bump this table, It really exemplifies the screen wobble as it moves back and forth. The entire thing shakes like that. That's something that you'll notice with these hinges, but you guys can leave a comment and let me know how this looks and sounds to you with the onboard camera and microphone. Okay, so now let's get into a speaker test, although I first want to mention, I know I keep saying this, but the colors in this screen are just really striking. This is really, really nice dark blacks here, very vibrant colors, and it looks fantastic. But let's see how the speakers actually sound. So honestly, the speakers, I mean, you can tell it's on a small laptop. They're definitely not the largest out there, so not the loudest or the deepest bass. But I mean, all things considered, looking at how small this laptop is, I don't think anybody can complain by the quality or the sound of those speakers. Next test, I want to show you the results from the Geekbench score. So we have two tests. We have this one right here, the OpenCL score, 18,900. And then, of course, the single and multi-core scores over here. Overall scoring at least as well as most other laptops in this class. But of course, I'll show some comparisons in a future video. Now, as far as the internals go on this laptop, you have a few configurations you can choose from. This has the 11th gen Intel i7, which is Evo certified. It also has 512 gigs of solid state storage. So far, so good. That's all great to see in a laptop that is this compact, like just really impressive. But I found that it was a little bit limited with the amount of RAM you can have. So this either has 8 gigs or 16 gigs, which for a laptop that has the name Pro in it, you would really expect you could do a little bit more video editing and some really more demanding stuff. And I think 16 gigs might be a little bit limiting, especially if you're editing videos on something like Premiere Pro. I really wish there was a 32 gig option. All right, so next, let's talk about the software. And this is something that normally you just totally brush over because normally it's nothing special. Windows laptop is a Windows laptop. But for the Samsung Galaxy Book Pro, this is really its bread and butter. This is what separates it from most other Windows flagship laptops, and it's really impressive. They're giving us a lot of integrations with the phone, a lot of different things that, like all types of different software that really bring you into the Samsung Galaxy ecosystem. And so for one, they're giving you things like Nearby Share, which is a great way to send files, basically like AirDrop, but for now Windows and Android. They also give us a native screen recorder on here, as well as an editor. They're giving us Smart Switch for PC, which means that if you have an old PC, you can transfer everything very easily without getting an external hard drive. Like all kinds of stuff like this really make it a smoother and better experience, which again, like I said in the beginning, is making it a little bit more similar to the experience you might get if you have like an iPhone and a MacBook. Now you can see right here, it comes with a ton of Samsung apps, including link sharing, live wallpaper, live message, and if we go down even more than that, down in the Samsung category, where we've got like Samsung Dex on here, Samsung Galaxy, Gallery, Samsung Notes, which synchronizes really well with your phone and your laptop here. You also get things like Samsung Smart Things, so you can control your entire home from your laptop if you have a Samsung Smart Home setup, and just a lot of other stuff. Overall, the Galaxy Book Pro 360 is not for who I thought it would be. Originally, I thought it was going to be a pro laptop that you could really push, and it would be great for anybody looking for a more pro application, maybe video editing or anything more demanding. Realistically, though, I think it's not going to be for that crowd, mainly because the limitations here. You're gonna be limited on the resolution, which is not okay if you're editing 4K videos. On top of that, you're gonna have a limited RAM, which again, for editing videos, is going to hold you back. So I wish they made this laptop, like I really like how thin it is, but I wish it was just a little bit thicker if it meant that they'd be able to add a higher resolution screen, more RAM, and honestly, maybe a place to put the S Pen. So I think this S Pen is probably not gonna travel with me, mainly because there's nowhere to put it in the laptop. But those are really the extent of the drawbacks here. Physically, I think it's a great laptop. Yeah, it gets some fingerprints on here, but I don't have any major complaints there. Screen wobble when you're in a video call is, not a big deal to me because I'm usually not going to be touching my desk. But there are plenty of positives here. You're finding a lot of software integrations and a really, really nice compact laptop that for anybody who is going to be maybe a student or traveling and stuff like that, this is going to be a fantastic laptop. I really think that it's maybe shouldn't be called a pro laptop because it's not really offering the pro lineup of features or specs on the inside, but it's still a great laptop for anybody who is a student, like I said, and you want that great integration with your phone, with your tablet, with the Samsung ecosystem, and I want to see more laptops do this, but I just wish next time, especially for this price, which it is pretty expensive, I wish they would push the specs a little bit farther. Like I said, higher resolution, higher RAM, But that's what I have to say about the Galaxy Book Pro 360. You guys can leave a comment below and let me know what you think of that. Of course, I will be comparing this to a lot of other laptops, including the Galaxy Book Pro not 360 and the Surface Laptop 4. If you guys want to see those videos, definitely do click that subscribe button below. Thanks for watching, guys. I'll see you next time.